So first of all, I am conducting an interview of several individuals. One, people that I'd like to call social activists for healthcare reform. Two, clinicians and providers of healthcare. And most importantly, consumers of healthcare. I am conducting this interview for a component of research and data collection. I would like to take the discussion, record, and transcribe the content for your review. So in these next 30 minutes or so, I'll ask a number of questions to get insight about your policy wish for the future of healthcare. I will at times ask for clarification and possibly probe, and you can tell me, if that's your final answer. I have no other things to include. Whatever your choice may be. But I do like to say, wherever our healthcare system is headed in the future, it is a set of questions, or it is a evolution of questions that we should ask ourselves that are more important along the way. And so again, I thank you for agreeing to share your vision and insight during this interview.
Okay.
First off, can you introduce yourself by name, role, title, and experience?
Sure. My name is Lauren Morton. The spelling is Lauren. Last name Morton, Morton. Currently, I am the CEO and co-founder of Aziza Enterprises, LLC, which is a women's mental health and lifestyle wellness company. My previous experience, I have 14 years of senior management, hospital administration experience, directly working in hospitals on program development and strategic planning.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So given your background, as tremendous as it is, how do you define healthcare?
In one sentence, healthcare is a right and not a privilege.
So what limits your description of healthcare? Because I noticed you said, as a prelude to your definition, it's a right and not a privilege.
Mm-hmm. So why am I limiting it to one sentence?
Yeah, sure, yeah. What provokes you to describe it as such?
Sure. Because I believe that our health is connected, is one of those God-given rights that we have. Just as much as we need air to breathe and water to sustain ourselves, and food and nutrition and shelter and love, we also need health. And health is really all-encompassing, both spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional health. And all of those things propel you to your career, your job, your family relationships, and has an overarching impact on all of those aspects, and all of the aspects for which you see in your life. And that, again, just as much as I believe, or why I limit it to that is to that one sentence, is because I truly and honestly believe that it is a right.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So do we have a moral obligation to provide health care to everyone as needed, or is health care a commodity that should be subject to the same marketplace influences as other commodities? I mean, given your approach, and I think you can now see why I asked you to give me greater depth and breadth to your response, was because of this question, and it may in fact not be applicable because you've affirmed what it is that is a right. But, is it a moral obligation as the people of the United States that we provide health care, and should it be subject to those same influences as other commodities that we have here?
Sure. So I'll take a step back and take an economic view on healthcare, and that I do believe that is a moral obligation. And here's why: the overall health and impact on health and loss of productivity, loss of days to companies, have a direct and indirect impact on the economy and the good and the strength of our economy in the United States, and particularly also our global economy. When you look, for example, in mental health care, we spend on average in any given year Americans spend about $201 billion per year on mental health services. That also, I will include in that number that $201 billion also that number does not include people that are incarcerated that have mental health, undiagnosed mental health issues, and we use our prison systems and incarceration for, which has a direct and indirect impact on the overall economy. In addition, we also the latest statistic that came out from Kaiser was that we lose about $193 billion per year on average of lost productivity due to various mental health untreated conditions. So when you take that out and you take that $193 billion over our government's GDP, over the average wage of an employee, you start putting those numbers, and you can equate that to jobs, to overall direct and indirect benefit into the economy that is lost.
Correct. Understood. I
would just add that I think it's just when most people would respond or they would hear the response like, oh, it's a moral obligation. Well, I do believe that because, again, it's, when you look at the economics of it all, but then also look at the impact that it has from a dollars and cents perspective, but for the underlying impacts that it has on family relationships, on togetherness of family, and the strengthening of a family in times of good health or in times of illness, has an impact on the overall productivity of that family, but then also for the people that are going to school and going to work that we're all interacting with.
That's great. Thank you for that. So, if in fact we do know that there is an economic correlation to one's health care and superior well-being that contributes to our overall GDP, should it be the government's role to provide health care for all Americans?
Yes. And again, the government has a shared interest in the overall health of their nation's economy. As we saw in our recent presidential election, their families are hurting. Families are concerned about their jobs, about their health care, about education. And so when you think about that, that has an impact again on our nation's GDP, which is an area of supreme interest to our government. And so our obligation, my belief, is the the government's obligation is that let's start to think about how we step back and what the government can do to ensure that what I believe are people's basic human rights, that they get what they need from the people that are responsible for providing those services, just as much as the government makes it their responsibility to collect our trash. And to collect trash, if the government has a shared interest in that, the government has a shared interest in making sure that their citizens have health and wellness.
That's a great comparison. Trash collection and government's interest in ensuring that those things are done.
Yep.
And next, leading into my follow-up question then, what would be some of the ethical concerns, ethical, ETHICAL, you have about the future of healthcare?
I think the president said it very, which I agree with, and it's a position that really why I went into healthcare is that we have a program. Our current healthcare system is a sick healthcare system as opposed to a preventative and wellness healthcare system. So our current system incentivizes people for sick care, and it's the responsibility, I think, of all of us to really think about what preventative measures we can put in place, how we ensure, for example, we'll go to the Pap smear. Pap smear was an early advancement in discovery in cancer research, and the number of deaths that have been prevented from a test, which costs about $50 to have the ability for women to have a Pap smear or to have a mammogram, which is a $50 exam. Compare that to the overall cost that it is to treat a patient who gets diagnosed with cancer. Not only just the surgical piece of it, but the subsequent chemos
and the rehabilitative.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
And the rehabilitative.
Yeah, and all the rehabilitative work that comes with it. The cost for the preventative work far outweighs the overall benefit and the overall cost from the sick care system that we currently have in place. And I think I'm kind of going off for what your original question is, but if we start to think about, how we're trying to control costs, that's one area that we have got to do better in, and we're not.
The controlling of costs, a huge ethical concern. I like that you brought up prevention versus treatment, because that's one of the next questions that I have as well. But I'd like to talk more pointedly about an area that you just brought up. It was some time ago in possibly 2002, 2003, I devoted some graduate research time to looking at 4 pockets of communities within Washington, D.C., what we call Ivy City, Trinidad, Anacostia, and Chilliam, the Chilliam community. And what I wanted to do was look at the possible impact of bringing prevention into the communities through mobile health care. And one of the things that I tried to justify and convince my reviewing committee of was the utility of prevention over treatment, and in showing them the costs averted with the prevention in a decision tree of all things that you could show individuals, just a decision tree to show you the cost savings, the likelihood of one surviving and having a full and carefree life when you chose prevention over treatment, particularly in these communities which were under-resourced in the event that they did not have readily accessible medical care within less than 3 minutes or 5 minutes of their home? There were no community health centers that were well equipped to care for some of the chronic diseases within those communities. And certainly an individual's ability to pay was not always dictated by the access to quality of care. So I do like your raised opinion about, our healthcare system currently being characterized as a sick healthcare system. So in light of that, I think there's this battle of some sort, right? Prevention versus treatment. Yes. And certainly there's an influence of that opinion that impacts the future of healthcare. So if you thought about that more opinionatedly, if that's the word, if you gave more thought to that, how do we then become the communities, the statehoods, the regions, and therefore the nation with a prevention mentality over treatment?
Yes. So I very crassly or flippantly, I said to people before, it's either pay me now or pay me later.
Boom.
So and the reason why I say that in a couple, and I'll kind of use a couple of different examples. So when you talk about, most people think of, will say, I don't really care. It's not my concern. I have insurance. I don't need to be invested in it. Well, if you look at people, if people have employer-sponsored insurance, when you look at what their deductible, what they were paying bi-weekly, their company and their coverage 10 years ago, I would say, to now, it's almost night and day. And so what they're paying out has gone up, and what they're getting in return, even though it's an employee-sponsored plan, has gone down. Why? For a couple of reasons. So when I was in the hospitals, oftentimes we have uncompensated care. Mm-hmm. So if you're talking about, at that time I was working for a Fortune 200 for-profit company that was giving anywhere from $65 to $75 million of uncompensated care a year. Probably a little more than that. That's an impact on someone. Eventually the hospitals have to recoup their money. They still have staff that still need to get paid. They still have physicians that need to be cared for. So as the insurance company cuts what they're reimbursing them, the hospital increases their charges. Well, that has a kind of a ripple effect on what gets paid to your what your insurance company charges your particular employer for your coverage, because eventually it all kind of circles back around. So yes, I'm increasing your people come in, they don't have insurance, they go through the ER care, they provide care because by federal law they have to. Mm-hmm. Insurance company cuts their costs. The hospital increases their prices to at least recoup some of the dollars back that they're going to lose. Because again, staff still have to get paid, physicians still have to get paid, supplies, drugs, medication all have to still get purchased, and eventually it comes back around. It hits the consumer who has, I have employer-sponsored care. It's not my concern. That's one. The next thing is that when you think about our trauma centers, so in D.C. you have, I say D.C. General, but it's not that called. It's not called that anymore. But you have hospital trauma centers. Well, it doesn't matter. Even if you have employer-sponsored care, if you get into a major car accident, if you get you still have to have a place to go to get your coverage paid for. So it is important when you look at rural hospitals, when you look at major trauma centers that are in significant financial trouble or are having to close their doors because the money just isn't coming in, that has an impact on you, me, the consumer who is sitting at home. We've got our nice little employer-sponsored plan or a nice coverage. It's not my concern. It's not my concern until you or your family member has to go to a rural hospital that's now closed and you have an hour drive to get care, or you have a major car accident and have to go to the nearest trauma center that's now closed because you have no place to go.
Correct.
So, that's a very long answer.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. Pay me now, pay me later. Or pay me later.
Yeah. It's so I always respond to people when they say, it's not my responsibility, and I'm like, pay me now or pay me later. I mean, what were you, and now I'll use the same company as an example, because our healthcare costs were going up so much, all the employees on that plan. So before, someone say, you could say, well, it's because it's your company, you should be supporting the company that you work for. Well, if my physician primarily goes to, say, a competitor's hospital, or I need to have a surgery that our competitor is very good at, I'm entitled to that same level of care as anyone else. But because our healthcare costs were going up so much for employees, that if you had your care, your labs, your X-rays, your radiology tests, and you're hospitalized at one of those hospitals, then your hospital bill was waived.
And waived with
meaning that it was written off, and it was like
indigent care.
Yeah, it was kind of it was written off, not indigent care, but it was seen as like a discount. So the hospital didn't charge the facility fee to your insurance, but would still charge for everything else. Okay,
great.
Yeah, but again, if I was at a hospital, let's say maybe in some of the markets where a hospital was in, maybe if we didn't have a cancer center, or you had a rare type of cancer, and a colleague that I worked with had a rare type of cancer, and no one treated that particular type of cancer in our network of hospitals, and she had to go to the next largest city, which had a physician who could treat her type of cancer, but then she was ultimately responsible for the facility fee and all of that, but it just wasn't covered.
Okay. So then, as we talk about the responsibilities of individuals and government assuming healthcare costs for themselves and that of others, what is the responsibility of our elected officials in shaping the future of healthcare? Same as what we would think about government, that it should be provided. Okay. Because
I think I think elected officials sometimes don't often do a good job of really explaining to people what this means. So they tend to take a very reactive position about things as opposed to a proactive position. And so explaining to people, I think if you explain to, I'm optimistic that I think if we explain to people what this means, I'm asking you to pay for, in the state of Georgia now, to pay for, years ago they had a tax on your tags to pay for the trauma center. Well, there was only one trauma center in Georgia, and we're really in Atlanta at the time. The second one was in South Georgia, at Medical College, Georgia. But the Grady continues to take care of mostly a tri-state area.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but people were like, I don't want to pay for this. I don't want to pay for this. Well, but think about this. You have to, I think our elected officials don't do a good job of really taking a long view and taking the long approach and really explaining to people what this means. And telling people, kind of step out of your way, and almost taking a very human perspective. If it were my family member,
giving you the vision. I certainly understand with that, and can certainly relate to being able to deliver the story, and to give people the vision so that they're more inclined to be a part of the vision and to want to champion the vision and the same notion. So with that, and giving people the vision, what is our responsibility as voters for holding these elected officials accountable in shaping the future of healthcare?
I think we have a tremendous responsibility. I think we have a tremendous responsibility. I think we have a responsibility as voters to truly educate ourselves on what this means, to truly understand and to truly educate ourselves on why our costs are going up, why our costs and charges far exceed our southern and northern neighbors for overall healthcare costs. We truly need to ask ourselves why. We do. And we have that responsibility because we don't need to let some talking head on the news tell the story for us. We need to take the time, research, think about ourselves, and think about, well, how have my own personal healthcare costs gone up?
True.
And I hold us personally responsible for this because we don't, and people don't take the time to really and truly educate themselves.
So I think the cornerstone of this larger interview was, what is your policy wish for the future of healthcare? Given these various layers that I've tried to dig at in a very short and abbreviated time, and that you've given me certainly insightful knowledge and experience to lead me to this most foundational question of what is your policy wish for the future of healthcare?
Wow, that's a good question. I wish that the American public, our elected officials, and our government would take the long view and understand the economic, societal, and moral obligations that we have to healthcare and to make sure our citizens are in optimal health and have access to optimal health. It is my health policy wish that we all educate ourselves, all levels, both the government elected officials and individuals around healthcare and what's impacting healthcare and our healthcare decisions. So it is my hope, my hope is that we, look at our current plan, that our current care under the Affordable Care Act stay in place. Some of the fixes, we move forward with those fixes and get those done. That we all, on both sides of the aisle, recognize are fixes that need to happen. And I also think that we need to do that. I also think that we need to have some very serious and discussions. Our government officials need to have some very serious discussions with the pharmaceutical device and insurance companies around, we're all in this together. We got to make this work. The health of our country depends on it.
And that is your policy wish.
And that's my policy wish.
Well, Ms. Morton, I do thank you exceptionally for offering this period of time to give insight and direction to the future of healthcare policy. I take this as a privilege as you embark on your expanded horizon of improving the lives of women, as you continue to found your company, Aziza, as it is that you've described beforehand. Women's health is a true passion of my own. I spent some time looking at a very small cohort of women who suffered from vulvodynia, which is a painful experience of women and sort of removes the whole embracing of feminism when experienced by women. So I applaud your efforts in taking the very holistic approach to improving the lives of women, holistically, that is, and certainly challenging our communities to take greater sense in the lives of women as well. And I wish you much success in that endeavor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to conclude this interview as of now.
Thank you.
Thank you.